Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. I'm putting up this video in reference to a link that somebody had posted in the comment section on one of my videos, and I'll put the link in the comment or in the description section of this video so you can go to it and you can see what we're talking about. But whoever the person was that filmed this and put it up on YouTube went to one of Benjamin Creme's lectures when he was alive, and he had this hidden camera, and it's funny because it kind of, in the description of it, kind of made it sound like he would be in trouble with Sharon National if they found out who he was, or they come after him or something like this, just because they didn't, Sharon National wasn't really that fond of people taking videos of Benjamin Creme's lectures. Now, it's really nothing could really be further from the truth. It's not like Sharon National wanted people to videotape Benjamin Creme at their lectures, right? They just didn't want any outside parties filming him. Because when you give somebody permission, whether it's tacit permission or explicit written permission to film something, they can kind of use it however they want to use it. And this day and age, of course, you know that anybody can edit anything and make it sound however they want and then put it up on the internet, and everyone who listens to it, large majority of it will believe what they say. So they didn't want that, of course. Now, who would want that? Now, Benjamin Creme has always been open and honest about, when he was alive, about his views on Maitreya, on the world, on politics, or whatever. And if you ever want to hear his views on those things, I definitely recommend checking out his books or checking out Sharon National's webpage or whatever, because Benjamin Creme never had anything to hide. It was just, like I said, he didn't want this information just kind of going out, and whoever wants to talk about it can use it in any way they want. And that's not what he wanted either, right? Now, the video that they show, because this person wanted me to explain what was going on. Well, in every one of Benjamin Creme's lectures, toward the end, he was always overshadowed by Maitreya. And it was, the majority of that time, it was Maitreya didn't speak any message to the audience. It was just Benjamin Creme sitting there, and it was more of an energetic blessing that Maitreya gave out through Benjamin Creme to everyone in the audience. Now, they kind of started, I know when Benjamin Creme was here in Atlanta, they didn't do it, but I guess they started doing it later on, where he would be overshadowed, and then I guess Benjamin Creme thought it would be a good idea to have everybody be able to hear Maitreya's voice. Now, that recording, it's a recording of Maitreya. It's overshadowing Benjamin Creme. But it was a recording, it was one of many recordings that were taken when Maitreya overshadowed Benjamin Creme in the late 70s and early 80s. And it's full well documented. You can actually buy, I have a set of the tapes so I can hear it, and it was given out almost, I think, on a weekly basis in England and London, but it was at Friend's House, Houston Road, London. And if you don't feel like getting the tapes, you can actually buy one of the books, I think, on Amazon or whatever, but it's Messages from Maitreya the Christ, I think is what it's called. But anyway, they were messages that Maitreya gave through Benjamin Creme at that time. So it was a recording of one of those messages. Now, there were times here over the last few decades that when Benjamin Creme was interviewed on a radio station, for instance, the announcer or the interviewer would ask if Maitreya could overshadow him. And oftentimes, not all the time, but sometimes, Maitreya would actually give a message through Benjamin Creme at that, during that radio interview. But during his lectures, it might have happened a few times that I don't really know for sure the exact number. But for the majority of the time that when he did a lecture, there was no message that was given out. So they just kind of did it as a, just kind of a way of of getting Maitreya's messages out there, so to speak. So he wasn't trying to fool anybody. He wasn't trying to, make people feel some kind of way about it. It was really just, an added addition of a blessing to the crowd so they can kind of hear it as they're actually being blessed by Maitreya. Now, it's interesting also that people that go to Benjamin Creme's lectures, not all of them, of course, agree with Benjamin Creme, and some of them are outright against him. But I know when he came here to Atlanta for the first time, the group that I here in Atlanta that helped put on that lecture, we had to scrape every nickel, dime, and penny that we had to even just get the lecture off the ground, right? So I borrowed a musician friend of mine's PA system. So I put it up and I installed and I put it all together and I ran the soundboard or whatever. And so I was sitting behind the audience, kind of thing. So you got Benjamin Creme on the stage and you got the audience, and then I was kind of in the back of the room. And because I was in the back of the room, I was close by the light switches. And Benjamin Creme had said something to me earlier on that when at the time comes when Maitreya is going to overshadow him, he would prefer the lights be turned down. Not totally off into total darkness, but just down. And I said, okay, fine. So when that time came, I actually leaned back and I turned off a few of the lights. So I guess like the security lighting was on, maybe a light in the background or whatever, but for the most part it was kind of a dusky kind of look in there, right? It wasn't dark, it wasn't light. Anywho, there was a gentleman who was sitting in one of the front rows, and he is a fundamentalist Christian, and he saw this golden light appear around Benjamin Creme when he was being overshadowed by Maitreya. And he wrote on his webpage at that time that he was convinced that the Sharon National group that put on that lecture, which was us, had installed some kind of sophisticated lighting system in there to fool him. Now, I remember that lecture. I didn't see any light around Benjamin Creme, so it was either this guy or a few people or whatever, but he saw it, so he had this Maitreya experience where he actually saw this energy, but then he was, because of his conditioning, he was convinced that, in his paranoia, that he was convinced that that we were trying to fool him. Well, the only sophisticated light system we had was I leaned back in the chair and I turned the lights down. So I was the one that was in charge of that, so I know that for a fact, right? Now, the other thing is, in this comment that this person put up, they were talking about Maitreya being the false Christ or whatever. And, that's really for everybody to decide on their own. And that's why I always say in these things that I'm not really trying to convince anybody that Maitreya is the Christ or the imam mahdi or whatever. It's up for everybody else to decide. My job is really just to tell you about it, and then you can just do your own research and find it out for yourself. And if you still think he's the false prophet or whatever, then that's up to you. And it might take Maitreya being on TV for a while before people start to trust him more. Some people, I'm sure, will never trust him, because of their conditioning or whatever. And the masters already know that, and they're already expecting that. So it's not anything unnatural, because they know the conditioning of the world, really, and how divided it is, and how set in our own ways that we all are as individuals. Now, the other thing too that this, in reference to that, is when we see Maitreya on TV or we see him in person out in the future, we're never going to hear him going around talking about how he's the Christ. He doesn't talk about stuff like that. He doesn't even like to be referred to that. And according to Maitreya, he only wants to be known as the teacher, because it creates less confusion in people's minds, because that's really what it's coming from. It's not coming from him. The confusion's not coming from Maitreya, it's coming from our own conditioning. And the distortions of the teachings that we've learned for all of our lives and all throughout the generations since the distortion started, really. So, like I said, Maitreya only wants you to want for the world what he wants for the world, which he wants peace. He wants through justice, through sharing. That's what he wants. So it's not about belief. You'll be really surprised how these masters are totally detached from anybody's belief structure. And they don't come here to confirm somebody's belief. They don't come here to not confirm somebody's belief, or somebody else's belief. They come here only to serve humanity. And they know the truth. And they're here to teach us the truth. But they're not here to spread any kind of dogma or to get you to believe something other than you already believe now. And so the other thing, too, is in that comment, the person, of course, mentioned the Antichrist. Now, when people comment about the Antichrist, or they write about the Antichrist or whatever, they always use a capital A. If you look at the Bible, there's no capital A Antichrist. It's all lowercase a. Because the Antichrist is not a person. Just like Satan in the Bible, unless it was at the beginning of the sentence, is a lowercase s. Because Satan is not a person either. It's the selfish nature within all of us. Every one of us, without exception, has that Satan quality, that selfish quality within all of us, that the biblical figures we're talking about. But we also have the Christ principle within us. It's just a matter of what are we manifesting at this time. Are we manifesting our selfish nature, or are we manifesting the Christ principle? It just depends. The masters manifest Christ principle perfectly. That's what makes them masters. We're human. We're still working toward it, but eventually we will get to where they are. They are the guarantee that we will manifest our soul nature perfectly. But that's all it is. And then with the Antichrist is an energy. But it's an energy that's sent out purposefully to destroy the ways of thinking, the ways of relating. And that's, if you read Benjamin Creme's books, if you read Alice Bailey's books, they talk about this at much greater depth, but that's really what it is. Now, according to esotericism, Emperor Nero of the Roman times, he was an Antichrist. He manifested that Antichrist energy. But if it wasn't for that energy going out and destroying the old ways of thinking and destroying that kind of civilization at that time, and I mean, it's very painful and destructive to live through that, I'm sure, right? Christendom wouldn't have been able to survive. So all the great qualities of the Christian church that have brought us to this day, right, would not have flourished. The ideas of Jesus would not have flourished in the way that they did if it wasn't for the Antichrist at that time, being sent out into the world to destroy the ways of thinking before Jesus came on the scene. Now, people look for the Antichrist all the time, right? They're looking for him on the internet. They said Obama's the Antichrist. They say Trump's the Antichrist. They say this person's the Antichrist. Well, the Antichrist has already come and gone. It's like I said, it's an energy, but it was an energy that was sent out through the Axis powers of the Nazis in Germany, especially Hitler, the fascists in Italy, and the militarists around the emperor in Japan. So those three of the Axis powers made up the triangle that allowed the Antichrist energy to be sent back out into the world. And if we lived through World War II in Europe or in Asia or whatever, it was very destructive, of course. But you and I, if we could go back in time, could not believe how limited the thinking was of the people before that time. We didn't relate to each other that way that we do today. So that energy was sent out as a destructive and as unpleasant as it is, was sent out purposefully to allow a new way of thinking, which is what Maitreya and the masters are talking about: cooperation, justice, brotherhood, sharing the world's resources to exist. So the Antichrist's work is done. So people who are looking for the Antichrist are kind of on a fool's errand. They're just looking for nothing. But of course people will believe Maitreya is the Antichrist. He doesn't represent, and he's not the perfect picture of what people expect the Christ to be, but the Christ never has been like that. Even Jesus had to deal with that when he was, 2,000 years ago when he was in Palestine. The people of that day didn't see him as the Christ, of course, and they didn't accept him as that. It was just a relatively few people that actually believed that he was the Christ, and that's why he was put to death the way that he was, Now, this time's a little different. Maitreya is coming for the whole world. He's coming for people who are more educated, people who know a little bit more about life than they did 2,000 years ago, but that little bit is a lot if you really look at it. And so he's coming to teach the whole world. Maitreya and the masters come for the whole world without exception. Every single man, woman, and child they come for. They do not exclude anybody. And you'll be amazed at how inclusive they are of people of different walks of life, different beliefs, people that you would think would be strange, people that you would think would not be a spiritual person at all. Their love will include them as well. And it's just like Jesus did back 2,000 years ago when he would go into the home of the tax collectors against the wishes of everybody else. Even his closest disciples, against their wishes. He went in there because he saw nothing but unity, nothing but oneness. He loved them unconditionally. Now Maitreya and these masters, like the Master Jesus, come the same way, but they come for the whole world. So hopefully this explains it. Hopefully explains the video. Hopefully explains a little bit more about what the Antichrist is and what a false prophet is from an esoteric perspective. But again, it's up to all of us to make up our own minds. So thank you. Hope it helps. And as always, take action. Help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos. Have a great day.